When I play up game and then talk, I'm trying, Jennifer.
Rip City, boy oh boy, do we got a special one for you guys. We got a guest speaker here with us tonight, and he's in the big times. He's made it to the big leagues. But before I introduce him, Fawad, how are you doing tonight?
Sorry, I'm good. Sorry about that. I'm excited to be back. It's been, I don't know, a month now? But it's good to be here, and what better way to come back than to bring on one of the Trailcasters, so I'm excited.
Well, Fawad just spoiled it. We got a Trailcaster. We got a radio broadcaster. We got the one, the only Chris. How are you doing, Chris?
I'm doing great, but what I don't understand is why Trailcaster is how I'm introduced. I mean, if I had to introduce myself, I'd be like, yeah, Chris Burkhardt of Rip City Radio and Courtside Monday and the Oregon Schools Activities Association and a father of 3 and a T-ball coach and Trailcaster podcast host.
I mean, let's be honest.
That's my fault.
I can't remember all those things. I can barely remember what I had for lunch today.
I mean, your resume is like 10 pages long. You can't
it is too long. But no, that's fair.
Up your Wikipedia.
The only reason I say that out loud on your podcast is because I know that my co-host on that podcast, Keith, has no life. So he's definitely going to listen to this and he's going to hear it. And he's going to, damn you, Burkhardt. And then he's going to chuckle.
Well, before we even get started, I'm gonna just be upfront and honest. I listen to your guys' podcast all the time.
Well, thank you.
But let me put a but here. I have not listened to a podcast in probably 2 months. And I mean, we've only done one podcast in like the last 2 months. So I cannot tell you probably for the last 2 months what you guys have talked about. I've been in dark place of tiredness and new kids and everything else. But
that's right. You welcomed a new one to the fam. When was that?
Well, he's what, 4 months now? 4 months old. So
okay,
a 3-year-old and a 4-month-old.
So turn of the calendar then. So January or December?
Like November. I guess he's 5
November.
Now. November.
Okay, so
yeah.
November.
Yeah.
Okay, because mine was born in October. So you and I are.
Wait a minute. You had another one?
Oh yeah, baby number 3 was born in October. So I feel you on this fatigue thing.
I remember this. now. Yes. Yeah. It's wild. Yeah.
Two wads out there
more than enough.
Like,
so you got 3.
This over our head. This over my head, guys.
So I know you guys didn't come to listen to us talk about babies and life, but first and foremost, Chris, thank you so much for coming and talking with us. This has been in the works for a long time. We've been talking about doing this for a while, and we got a hot take today, and I figured, you know what, we're gonna get Rip City Radio himself in here, and we're gonna get his opinions.
God, I'm gonna get roasted, but here we go.
I don't think so. I don't think you're probably the one that's gonna talk us off a ledge. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So I'm just gonna start it off. We're just gonna get right into it. My very first question for both of you guys. It's something that's been talked about for a year and a half now. And I want to know, Chris, your thoughts first.
Okay.
Can we be a championship competitive team with Dame and Ant as our 1 and 2? Do you truly think that we can be?
No, I do not.
Okay. I'm glad we're on the same boat. I was afraid you were going to say yes, and I was going to wait for you to convince me otherwise.
Nope, I am not going to convince you otherwise.
Okay.
The sad part of the situation here is that Ant is a completely different player than CJ McCollum, right? Their strengths and their weaknesses are not the same. But it still feels like a retread. It still feels like deja vu. It just still feels like you're doing the exact same thing over and over and over again. And the Blazers cannot afford, and it's not just the Blazers, it's pretty much any team in the league. You cannot afford to just roll out your 2 best players as a point guard and a shooting guard. It just does not work that way. And historically has never worked that way. I'm sure I've said this to you. I know I've said it many a time on Trailcasters. But one of the last articles I wrote there at NBC, rest in peace, was about the fact that the current Blazers roster just wasn't constructed to win a championship. And keep in mind, I wrote this in 2021. But the fact is, if you go over the last 30 years plus of NBA history, Alex, how many times does a team win when their best player is a point guard?
No, I mean,
you got the Warriors.
Yep.
You got Chauncey Billups Pistons, and then you have Isaiah Thomas's Pistons.
Yep.
And what sets those teams apart is their best player was a point guard, and Chauncey Billups's Pistons, arguably, maybe some people would go maybe a Sheed or a Ben Wallace. Some people would go Rip, right? But I think Chauncey was the best player on that team. But the thing is, they're constructed in such a way that they have elite defenders. They have 3-and-D type guys. They have guys who can sit in the paint and block shots and score. Like they're constructed in a very specific way. And Portland doesn't have that around Damian Lillard. There is no true 3-and-D wing that they need. There is no stud guy in the paint who's just going to go get you buckets. There is no defender, right? That's been the biggest weakness for years. Now, everyone knows the bad boy Pistons. I don't need to go down that list, right? And you look at the Chauncey Billups Pistons, who I personally loved because I'm a Rasheed Wallace guy through and through. But I mean, Ben Wallace was a defensive player of the year. Rasheed Wallace was not a slouch on either end. Either was Rip Hamilton. Tayshaun Prince was a young stud who was, 2 years into the league, was one of the best small forward two-way players. And then the Warriors, obviously, Curry was their best player, but then they had Clay, who, great two-way guard in his prime. They had Draymond, who his prime run, he was the best defender in the league. So they're built in very, very specific ways. And Portland is so far from that. They're in a different hemisphere on the other side of the planet from that type of roster construction. So the long answer to your question is no, I do not think they can ever build a championship contender around Dame and Ant combined.
Okay, and I'm glad you went into it because it's going to lead to our next question. But before we get there, Fawad, we've talked about this before. I know how you feel, but let's just chalk it up one more time. Can we compete with Dame and Ant?
You're gonna get into that Dame and Ant? No chance.
Yeah, I mean, is there anything you want to add on to his
I think
beautifully stated?
Yeah, Chris stated it beautifully. Our team is not balanced. We have no defenders. We have no, go-to scorer in the paint. Just, the list of issues is endless.
Okay, well, we're just gonna carry on to the very next question, and it's very simple. How far off are we from having a competitive championship caliber team? Chris, how far away are we? Because I got a feeling we're pretty far away.
You are a second star away from being a legit contender. And I don't know if that means you're a championship contender, but you're a contender. Like you're in the playoffs, you're not worrying about play-ins. Like you're a contender. You have a chance to make noise. So if you go out and you get and just preface this with, I'm not saying this is a player that I think they should go get or rumored to go get. I'm just saying, but say you go get like a DeMar DeRozan type, right? Who fills a lot of holes for you at small forward, guard, wherever you want to play him, plays multiple positions. I think he's better defensively than everyone wants to say. People think he's trash. I don't think he is. He's a legit all-star, right? So now you're going in the right way because Dame hasn't had a legit all-star next to him since LaMarcus Aldridge. Okay? So now you're in the right path. To me, going back to what we said about point guards being your best player, unless you hit a home run with multiple moves and all of a sudden flip this roster on its head and get something closer to what we just talked about, the only other way to change this dramatically and be a true contender in my eyes is to get a second star that makes Damian Lillard your second best player. Okay, so say you go out and get a Joel Embiid, which everyone has been I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure that if they fizzle out of the playoffs, or if Harden goes to Houston, that Joel Embiid might want out, and Philadelphia might trade him. Guys, he's the MVP of the league. They're not trading him. And if they are going to trade the MVP of the league, do you think Portland has the assets to do it? The answer is no.
No.
But let's just say that a Joel Embiid type is a difference maker to Portland being a contender, because if Joel Embiid is on your team, Damian Lillard is your second best player. He's your second best player. And people don't want to admit it, but that's just a matter of fact. Oh, but it's still Damian Lillard's team, Chris. Yeah, no shit. Like Kevin Durant was the best player on the Warriors team, right?
Yep.
But was that Kevin Durant's team? No. That was Steph Curry's team. He's probably still the best player on this Phoenix Suns team, but that's Devin Booker's team. Right? So being the best player on the team doesn't mean that you have to supersede everything else and you are the guy and everyone's because it's just not it. So you could have a Joel Embiid type and it can still be Damian Lillard's team, no problem. But to get to the true, I think that team is making noise, I think Damian Lillard needs to be the second best player on the team, or they need to hit home runs with multiple moves, not just one.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible to have Damian Lillard be your best player and win a championship. That's not even a question that anyone should have to ask.
I definitely think it's possible.
Yeah, but like you said, that roster has to be constructed in a way that helps him with his inefficiencies, helps the team as a whole. And the way we are right now, that's not where we're at. Not anywhere. I don't feel anywhere close. And there are changes. Fawad, what about you? How far off are we?
Funny, me and you, we always talk about how we agree so much. So I was hoping, having a third person today might help get a mix of opinions. But Chris is just so smart. He pretty much hit the nail on the head. Everything, my thoughts exactly. I think, honestly, the one thing I do disagree on is I think even DeMar, he makes us a contender for the second round. That's about it. I don't think even that is enough. But yeah, if we're gonna be a true contender, it has to be someone who's better than Dame. Without that, it's not happening.
Yeah, but then even DeMar, people, I don't know why people crap on him. He's 33 years old, blah, blah. Yeah, you know who else is old? Jimmy Butler, and he's been the best player in the playoffs. Unfortunately, he's out now with an ankle injury, but the dude's been a stud, right? So you get DeMar DeRozan, who's a legit all-star, Fawad. We all know that. A guy who's going to go out there and get you your 20 plus per night and just be a stud, help you on both ends. And then you roll out a lineup out there with, for all intents and purposes, say we're rolling Dame, Shaden, DeMar, Grant, and Nurk, right? That is leaps and bounds better than anything you put out there, because for the first time since maybe Nick Batum, that's how far you go back, that you have a legit starting at small forward.
Yeah. No,
Maurice Harkless was not a starting forward. Maurice Harkless, I said this at the time, so this is not revisionist history to me. I said this even during the 2019 run, that to me, the Blazers truly turned the page, turned the corner, and were in the right path when Al-Farouq Aminu and Mo Harkless were rotation players. Right?
Yeah.
And then you go out and get Norm Powell and you start him at the 3, and he's not a 3. Just look at his splits with what he played in Toronto, which I know Fawad is going to be familiar with, and look at what he did look what he's doing with the Clippers right now, where 70% of his minutes are at the 2. Right? Okay, you got Josh Hart, who in New York is still playing about a 50-50 split between 2 guard and small forward, but the biggest difference is what? Oh, he's coming off the bench and playing what he's better suited for as that rotation guy, not a starter, right? So DeMar DeRozan, I don't know if that's a move, guys, because that wouldn't make you better. No, that makes you significantly better, because you finally have a true starter in your starting lineup. To me, that makes sense. And he's only making, $28 million next year? I think it would balance your roster out better than Ant and Dame. Just saying.
I'm still of the opinion. Some people don't like this opinion, but Norman Powell was a big loss getting rid of him. I know why we did it. I get it, but the fit was much better with Norman Powell. If he was playing the 2, not the 3. I do not want him at the 3, but I like him better.
See, you brought me on thinking I was going to be against everything you said, but same thing. If you could go out in a vacuum and redo things, if you could go out and trade Anthony Simons right now and get you again, like a legit small forward or even a power forward, because I am still of the belief, I know people do think I'm wrong on this one, so maybe we'll differ, but I am of the belief that you can start a legit power forward. Hold on. And now I am of the firm belief that you could go out and get a legit starting power forward, right? So say, again, I'm not spitballing rumors here. I'm just throwing a power forward out there. So say you go and get a Julius Randle type, right? That you can move Jeremy Grant to the 3 and be absolutely fine. Like, it's not like you're losing a ton there. Plus, the way he shoots the 3 with proficiency, like, he still is going to be able to play that position. And so, no, like if you had a lineup, say you traded Anthony Simons and got a Julius Randle or a legit small forward, and so now your lineup was a Dame, Norm, Grant, Randle, Nurk. Like, I feel much better about that because at least you're getting defense, you're getting rebound, you're getting all the things that you don't have right now. So, as dumb as it sounds to some people, yes, I do think Norman Powell would be a much better fit continuing to be in Portland as a 2 guard. That's the caveat, right?
Yes.
Not playing small forward, then Ant would be a much better fit next to Dame.
And that's what we've always said is we had Norm playing out of position, and when he was playing the 2, and we're seeing it in LA right now. I mean, he is just, imagine him on our team right now. We'd be better off. Would it put us over the top? No, it wouldn't put us over the top, but that is a much better starting 2 guard for us than Simons is.
I would agree.
But I've said it before on this podcast, and what I think is, so, assuming you don't want your second best player to be another shooting guard, the best fit next to Dame, you want him to be a good defender, you want him to be able to create his own shot, you want him to be able to drive in, attack the rim, and you want him to be able to catch and shoot. Norm checks all those boxes. He was literally handcrafted to play next to Dame as his backcourt mate, and then we would need, like you said, trade Ant for that last piece. It was that simple. It was right there.
Yeah, I mean, it sucks because we were almost there. We were there. But no, I mean, and I'm gonna be honest with you. I would almost even rather Josh Hart be our starting 2 than having Simons, just with his rebounding, he is a better defensive player. He's a decent catch and shoot player. Even he fits better at the 2 than I feel Simons does for us.
It's been so hard for me to watch the Knicks this playoffs because every single game you have Josh Hart making huge plays. And I'm like, why couldn't he have done that for us? Like, why did we trade him so soon?
I mean, I don't think we weren't re-signing him. Is the problem.
It's all about where you're playing him, though, because you're playing him as a rotation small forward, right?
Yeah.
So now when he's coming in and he's playing a majority of the minutes with the second unit, he has the green light. Like, he can just play free and be himself. Now, when he's playing with the starting lineup in Portland, out of position most of the time, and is the 4th or 5th option because they want to get the ball into Dame, Ant, and Grant's hand as much as possible, and they want to get Nurk involved. He's hesitant to shoot because you're like, I'm taking away Dame's shot, I'm taking away Ant's shot. So it just doesn't play to his strengths. It's weird roster management and just coaching to me. And I mean, I don't know if I would take him as my starting 2 because I'm a Josh Hart guy. I still think he is a 6th man type. Bring him off the bench to fill a ton of holes where he can play comfortably. But it is frustrating to see so many decent players and guys who fill holes and things that should have been very good for you be mismanaged and then cast away because they didn't work for you. But you can't try to fit the square peg into the round hole and then be mad at the square peg, right?
Well, we keep trying.
It's not the square peg's fault. The square peg was designed to go in one specific spot, and you're being too dumb to realize it and still try to force it where it doesn't go. And it's extra painful to me because over the last handful of years, there have been 2 players that the Blazers have acquired that are on like my top 10 like favorite players in the NBA list, and they both fizzled out, and that's Robert Covington and Josh Hart. And it pains me that like 2 of my favorite players landed in my hometown and then got cast away. And I mean, And let's be fair to Robert Covington. Robert Covington isn't the Robert Covington of old, and he certainly isn't a starting power forward in the NBA anymore. But Portland sure tried to convince you that he was. We get people in the Trailcaster Discord, like our friend Die Mad over there, if you ever join, who tries to tell me how dumb I am because of, Joe Cronin traded Robert Covington. Robert Covington's getting DMPs for the Clippers, y'all. And Portland was trying to start him at power forward. Roster construction, but yeah, but Neil tried to tell everyone that it wasn't the roster, right? Oh, it wasn't the roster, and he threw Terry under the bus. Yeah, come on,
you're not allowed to say that name here. Neil is not allowed to be said anymore.
Like
I didn't say the last name.
That's true.
Any Neil.
That's fair. Armstrong. He's talking about Neil Armstrong. Everybody, don't freak out.
Neil Blomkamp with the new Gran Turismo movie coming out soon. But yeah, like again, I agree with you 100%. Mismanaged. That's the perfect word. We've mismanaged so many players. We get great players, play them wrong, give up on them like 6 months in, and then trade them away for like pennies on the dollar. It's so frustrating to have done that with 3 or 4 players now.
It's like you look at what was it? Oh my gosh, it was I'm going to blank here. There was an article from one of the Blazer aggregate sites about 5 possible trades. No one liked them because that's what, no one likes any trade rumors. But it was funny because 5 of the possible trades, one of them included Norman Powell coming to Portland. Another one included Zach Collins coming to Portland. Another one was Gary Trent or some shit like that. I'm like, oh, really weird that all these trade rumors that I mean, they're not really rumors. You're making them up. Things that would make sense for Portland are all these guys that Portland had and messed around with and just said, nope, doesn't work. Honestly, what would be perfect in Portland right now that Portland needs, because they have various holes. But one thing they needed this year was they just needed a true pure shooter off the bench, right? A guy who could just come in, bury threes. That was his only job. And you know who fits that role perfectly? Seth Curry. Who did Portland once have? Seth Curry. But then they tried to use him a little more to try to run the second unit and do things that wasn't his pure strength. And it's just like, thanks. You ruined that one too.
I have to comment on this. Sure, we didn't play him the best, but even if we did everything the best we possibly could have done, he wasn't staying. We couldn't offer him more than $3 million or something like that. And even minutes wise, 20, 25 was all we could offer him. So he was always leaving no matter what. He was gonna get what did he end up getting from Dallas? 30, 35, something like that. So we couldn't offer him anything. He was gone anyways. But yeah, he
I get it. I get that. But the point is, the guy who fills your holes right now, you had.
He was here.
Okay?
Yeah.
Now you might not have had the money at the moment to do them, but there could have been ways for you to move off of other players that didn't have a future with you or weren't important to your roster building, and to retain the guy that was going to be important for you down the road. So again, that goes back to roster mismanagement, in my opinion.
But then there's also something else that's funny. You guys talk about, moving on from players early, but then you got situations like CJ, you got situations like Simons, where it almost feels like we're holding on to them for too long. And in my opinion, CJ, when we lost in the Western Conference Finals, at that point, that was when we needed to capitalize on, his great series against Denver, and we didn't. And I still think we got fair value for him after the fact, but that value could have been so much higher had we taken that jump.
So I'm glad you said you got fair value for him, because everyone thinks Portland got fleeced. No. And I personally think that they got exactly what CJ McCollum was worth in 2022, right?
Yep.
They got what he was worth. I think you're just upset because you're thinking what you could have got for him in 2018 and 2019 is completely different. Now, I do know for a fact that the intent was to blow the roster up in 2019. The intent, there was all intent to trade CJ, to move off everything, to completely build around Dame, and that miraculous run to the Western Conference Finals changed everything. If they would have been outed in the first round, the intent was to say, it's done, blow it up, we need to fix it. But that run did the one thing it did not need to do, a 4-letter word, hope.
Yep.
It gave the front office hope that Dame and CJ could get it done.
Yep.
And that was a mistake because I covered that entire series, the entire playoffs, and people get mad at me. I'm like, it was a lucky run. They had no business being there, and I've said that before. I do think that's improper wording. People have called me on it, but I said it before, so let's just say it again. I don't need to strike and revision my history here. But the thing is, it took that playoff run took a bad shot from Damian Lillard. 1, 2. I covered that entire series, and Denver was the better team in that series. I'm sorry. Denver was the better team that series. It was just these key little plays that Portland made right at the right time. I mean, obviously, CJ McCollum's game 7, right, through the roof. And then Rodney Fresh Legs Hood should have an absolute freaking statue built outside Moda Center for that performance in the 4 overtime game. But I mean, I thought Denver was the better team for large chunks of that series, except those key little points where Portland took advantage. And then when they got to the Western Conference Finals, it laid itself out, and it proved itself right there that they weren't a Western Conference Final team.
But we can be appreciative of getting this Myers-Leonard send-off game. That'll still be one of my favorite things going for
25 points.
30 something, 35.
I think 30 for
off.
the game.
That was an awesome game. Even though we lost, dude, that was so funny. That was so fun to watch. So the big thing we were going to talk about, we haven't even talked about yet, but I just wanted to bring up something real quick because we've kind of talked a little bit. We haven't talked at all about these playoffs, and the playoffs have been insanely fun to watch. I've enjoyed watching all these series, and for those of you who are living under a rock, you got Milwaukee losing to Miami, the 1 in the 8. I mean, what was the last time? That was Dallas and Golden State, right? That was the last time that happened.
There was
or was there
one
before
Memphis
that?
and Spurs in 2011. I think there was one more after that.
That's right. That's right. The Grindhouse
Chicago
one, wasn't that? Wasn't it Grindhouse back then?
Grit and Grind.
Grit and Grind. There we go. That's what it was. Yeah, I mean, these playoffs have been insanely fun. For those of you that like the drama of players, you got Dylan Brooks just being absolutely stupid and saying the stupidest things and doing the stupidest things, and now you got Memphis saying, like, under no circumstance we're re-signing him. Like, I've never heard a team say that before. Like, they'll say, like, yeah, we're probably going a different direction, but never like, hell no, we're not going after him again. So, anything you guys want to add on the playoffs? It's been fun for me so far.
Yeah, it's been fun. I'm rooting for Miami. Yeah.
Anything for you, Chris? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, I didn't want you to hear the smacking of my pizza. This playoffs has been, I think, extremely painful if you're a Blazer fan.
Yeah.
Because
So
4 of the top 8 seeds were ousted in the first round, right? You had 2 top 4 seeds in the East, 2 top 4 seeds in the West. Now, I mean, I don't think Golden State was a true 6 seed, but still, like, that's how it was ranked. It was wide open. And I said on the 5th quarter with Chad Doing all year long watching this season unfold, I got receipts, baby. I got receipts. I said months ago that if there ever was a year for an 8th seed to go upset a 1 seed, this is the year, and I won't be shocked if it happens. And I'm not shocked that Miami did it. And so that should just sting you a little bit more if you're a Blazer fan. And yes, that's the Eastern Conference, right? But still, that's the type of year all the way around for the NBA that anybody has a chance to just go crazy and upset the world. And here you were trying to get the 5th worst record in the league for the last 3 weeks of the year.
Oh yeah, that was just the absolute worst basketball I've ever watched. One last quick little thing. Today it was announced Joel Embiid MVP. Fawad, do you think Joel Embiid was the MVP? Do you think it was Jokic? Do you think it was Giannis?
I would have given it to Jokic, but I think it was so close between. I wouldn't have given it to Giannis. He was like a distant third for me. Jokic and Embiid, it was a toss-up. I would lean towards Embiid. Like, I think they're both, like, amazing players, but I think the defense gives Embiid a little bit of an edge, and then also, like, people don't like this, but Jokic won 2 in a row, and I think Embiid was so close on both of them that like I feel like making it 2-1 kind of shows a more accurate like historical record. I know people don't like that as a reasoning, but that's kind of how I feel.
What you got, Chris?
Well, Fawad, that's dumb reasoning, but you know.
I've been told.
I mean, Jokic doesn't win it in the three. Like, if you go back over his last 3 years, he doesn't win it in the statistically best year he had of those years.
That's what I'm saying. He's MVP.
Well, what annoys me about the MVP, and first off, full disclosure, I think Embiid is very worthy of that award and deserves it. So congratulations. But the MVP is so weird because I think you just need to set up what your voting parameters are, right? Mm-hmm. Because MVP does not mean best. Because if MVP truly went to the most valuable player in the league, Michael Jordan would have had 20 of them. And LeBron would have won every single MVP since the year he entered the league, right? Like LeBron has been the best player in the league pretty much since day one. He's 38 years old and still balling out like crazy. Now, I know those are exaggerations, but the point is that the best player in the league does not necessarily win MVP, because right now, who is the best player in the league? I think if you ask that question outright, most people are probably going to say Giannis, right?
I would say Jokic for the record.
Okay, that's fair. Because that still goes to the point. Because you say Jokic, most people would say Giannis, and neither one of them won the MVP, right? You probably have a lot of people who would say Curry too. Man, he didn't win the MVP either. We went the Embiid. Now Embiid is definitely a top 5 player in the league, probably, right? But that's the weird part with the MVP is it doesn't always go to the air quote best player. But I also think that what annoys me about it is I have been, for the most part, I swayed at the end here, but Team Jokic, the way he plays the game, the things he does that changes the game, the fact that his game is so vanilla, but it's not, like it puts you to sleep, right? But it's like an animal that slowly poisons you until your heart stops, but you don't even realize that you're being poisoned. Like, he just lulls you to sleep, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, that son of a bitch has a triple-double, and we're down by 20, and I have no idea how it happened. I blacked out, right? Like, as for Embiid is just like right in your face, and you know what's going on. But I just hate the discourse that you do get on social where, like, I'm Team Jokic. Well, you're a moron because it goes to Embiid. Like, I never said Embiid was bad, y'all. Like, I'm just Team Jokic. I do just hate this idea that, voter fatigue.
Yeah, that's
my God.
That's
Come
dumb.
on. That's like the stupidity of what? Ken Griffey Jr. wasn't a 100% vote into the Hall of Fame because there was people who were like, I just think it's weird to have someone who's 100% and gets every vote. He's the highest voted one. Fuck off, guys. You're stupid. Voters are just, get off your pedestals, you weirdos.
I thought Ken Griffey was 100%, so
it was something weird like that. I don't know.
I like Ken Griffey. Okay, here we go. We're getting to the meat and potatoes of this podcast right here. Get ready.
Here we go.
Get ready. So something me and Fawad have briefly talked about just in our little private chat that we have. And if you would have asked me if I would ever have stated this at the beginning of the season, I wouldn't have. But I am getting more and more okay with the idea of trading Damian Lillard.
Right.
And I think here the more I think about it, here's what it is. If by some miracle we get the first pick, by some miracle, I don't think keeping Dame is the right move. Only because I don't think that time frame matches up perfectly, and I think you're better off just really fully embracing the future. But I haven't put a lot of thought into it. Just the more I think about it, the more I feel comfortable with that idea. So before we let Chris melt our minds with what's happening, Fawad, let me know how you feel too.
I kind of wanted to hear Chris first, but
okay,
I'll quickly.
Chris,
okay, Chris,
no, you threw Fawad out there. I gotta see what he has.
All right. Like really quickly. So yeah, like you asked me a year ago, I would say there's no chance I would ever even consider Dame, even if we're like consistently the worst team. I'd be like, I want Dame to stay. But now I've gotten to the point where it's like I don't see a realistic path for us building a contender around Dame. Like you said, we would need someone better than Dame. I don't see that happening. You know, fans think that like some superstar is gonna ask out this summer and we're gonna throw 5 seconds at him and get him, but that's not happening. So I don't see a path to contending with Dame, and I'm not at all like someone who's like contender or bust. Like I'm happy being a good playoff team, but it's just I feel like Dame's window is closing and he's so good, and he just had probably his best season, definitely his top two best season. I'm watching these playoffs and I'm like, yo, if you put him next to like Jimmy Butler, you put him next to Giannis, you put him next to one of these superstars, Dame could be a champion, and that's like the next best thing after Portland winning the playoffs. And then that also like half our team is probably under 25. So like rather than trading every single one of these guys, it's easier to, maybe see what we have, you know, try the young route, take this pick that we're about to have, even if it's not the number one pick, see what you have.
Fair. Like what
Now,
you're laying down.
I will say this before Chris destroys us. I will say this: if we get the second, the third, the fourth, fifth pick, to me, it's not worth keeping. To me, it's you trade that pick and you try to get better. But I feel like with the first pick, if you get the first pick, no one should be trading that pick. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Would you trade the first pick for Giannis? Would you?
I wouldn't. Actually, I don't know.
Yeah. Yes.
No, I think I might. I think I would. Yeah, I would.
It's so
Because
hard.
because here's the thing. Here's the thing. Blazer fan always has trouble with this because of Jermaine O'Neal and the what could have been, right? That's why they're so hesitant to even consider trading Shaden Sharp. But Victor Wembanyama, as good as he is supposedly going to be by all accounts, and I firmly believe that as well, it's still an unknown.
Yep.
But with Giannis, you are getting arguably, depending on who you ask, Fawad says no, the best player in the NBA. So you trade an unknown for the best player in the NBA every day of the week, twice on Sunday.
So do you think let's say that scenario happens? Do you think that's even an option for Milwaukee to consider? Would you think they would consider that?
No, they wouldn't.
Okay.
Because the best player in the NBA currently is better than Victor Wembanyama.
Which then leads to my point of if you get that first pick, you're not trading it because you're not going to get that value that you want. I agree with you, Chris. I think Giannis is the best, and I think him being on Portland would obviously make us immediately just one of the best teams, and it's not possible. We're not going to get Giannis and all these edits of people wishing him onto the Blazers with that Blazer uniform. It's not going to happen. So, all right, Chris, Dame, trade. What's your thoughts?
It's tough. No,
it is.
It's really tough because I brought this up with Keith, co-host on the Trailcaster podcast, at the beginning of the year about trading Dame, and he is not for it. And here's the thing: is if you get in your feels and you look through all of these things with your rose-colored glasses, then trading Damian Lillard is the last thing you want. Mainly because so many people in this current era of fandom consider him the greatest Blazer of all time. If it wasn't on the court, he hasn't taken him to a finals like Drexler. He hasn't won them a championship like Walton, but he's connected with the fan base more so than I think any player that's ever worn the uniform. And so it's deeply rooted, no pun intended, to the Oakland vibe there in Rip City. And so him wearing another uniform at this point would be hard. But you have to understand the business of the situation. And the business of the situation is that if you... I'll preface this with the fact that I wholeheartedly believe that Joe Cronin is not trying to sell us a bill of goods, like the former guy that apparently we're not supposed to say on this show. I'm going to say his name real quick because here's the deal. for the last X amount of years, guys, you heard the exact same thing from Neil every single year, right? We just need to make a few moves, and then you go out and you go get Mario Hezonja and Pau Gasol, who never played a freaking game for you, and like, I really believe that Mario Hezonja, Kent Bazemore, and Anthony Tolliver is what this team needed to get over the hump, right? And then when it all fails, it wasn't a product of the roster. It was the coaching. And it wasn't a product because he never wanted to say he was wrong, right? So everyone should be focusing on the fact that this year in exit interviews and in the media availability at the beginning of the year, at Media Day, Joe Cronin, this roster's not good enough to win an NBA championship as constructed. This roster needs help. And then rather than blame Chauncey for the situation, he said, we actually thought Chauncey did a good job considering the hand we gave him, considering the roster we gave him. So your GM is taking blame for the fact that the roster sucks. It absolutely sucks, right? So I wholeheartedly believe when Joe says that he's trying to going in and trying to make the right moves around Dame, that is plan A right now.
Yes.
Okay?
I agree.
But if you go out there, all the things we've already said, right? How I believe if you're going to make one big move, that big move has to make Damian Lillard the second best player on your team. Or you have to make multiple moves, which would, again, it would take a stroke of luck for everything to fall properly, right? You'd have to get a high pick. You'd have to unlock all your Chicago picks. You'd have to trade Anthony Simons and everything. You'd have to get everything to line up just perfectly to go get those 2-3 moves that just change everything. But if that doesn't happen, right? If you are sitting on October and preseason's about to start and you did not hit your home run, you struck out. Maybe you hit a double. Maybe you got some good pieces, but you just didn't hit that home run. Then you have to realistically look at your whiteboard. And if Damian Lillard's name hasn't been on it, you need to put it in big, bold letters as a tradable asset. Because right now, everything is always pointed to this summer being key. So when people freaked out about there not being a big move at the trade deadline, this is exactly how Joe Cronin choreographed this. This is exactly what he told us what was going to happen. If you,
I'd like to point one thing out really quickly.
Do it.
He did say this summer would be, the big one. That was his thing all along. But what he also said was that last summer was supposed to kind of bridge the gap. Where we were when he first came on, and he said that we can't become a contender in 1 year. We're going to need 1 year to become a playoff team, and then we can make that jump. We didn't make that that bridge. We're exactly where we are, like where we were the year before. So he said what he said was impossible a year ago. Now he's in that position now. So he seems like a good guy. I'm sure he'll try his best. I just don't think that level of a home run is possible.
See, now this is where I disagree, because I absolutely think he made a good attempt to bridge said gap. There was just a lot of things that worked against the Blazers, but everyone poo-pooed it in the moment. But I'm sorry, guys, Jeremy Grant was the right move.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
He went out and got you the best power forward you've had in nearly a decade. He moved off of an asset that you should have moved off of 3 or 4 years ago to get the absolute best value, and he got off of that as quickly as he could, right? I also think he deserves a ton of credit for the fact that the Gary Payton signing didn't work, and if you know for a fact that if Neil Olshey had signed that guy, he would have tried to tell you for the next X amount of years that he was under contract that he was the right guy. He just needs some time. And would have just force-fed you that. As Joe said, okay, that's not working. We have to try to get any sort of return on this as possible. Ship him out. Didn't work. That's what a good GM does. Okay, so I think Jeremy Grant was a good first move.
Wouldn't you rather have given him a full season, though? Gary Payton?
No.
Interesting.
He didn't want to be here.
For what? No, because knowing what I know from behind the scenes, it was done before it started. Okay. It was done. There was no amount of time here that was going to make Gary Payton fit in. It was done before it started. There was a lot behind closed doors that just was not working out. And so rather, again, try to force feed it, he moved off of it, which was the smart move. Okay. Now, I think there's so many things, again, whether it be injuries or lineups. I mean, the core four of Nurk, Grant, Ant, and Dame played a whole 34 games together. And up until they decided to wave the white flag, they were firmly in play-in contention until they decided that the pick was the route to go. So they were bridging the gap. Because to me, going into this, I said, people would be mad, but it's like if you went in and you made the playoffs and you got ousted in the first round this year, that was a huge success of a season compared to what you did last year, right? And you were right. You were right there. You were, again, another good move away. So I give him credit for that. But just back to the main point here is now you're sitting in a situation where hopefully you re-sign Jeremy Grant because that was your move. You don't want that to be gone. You probably have to trade Ant, possibly Shaden Sharp, even though people freak out. But again, if that's the move that you have to make to go get that key player, you have to do it. But then if those moves don't happen, Fawad, then you get the true test of the GM that you have. Because I think a smart GM looks at this and goes, okay, we had our assets. We didn't make a move. Building around Dame at this point is now impossible. This is a business. They all know it. Loyalty's getting us nowhere. We just had a top 5 pick in the draft. We used it like even if you get the second pick, like there's a realistic option there to trade Dame and draft Scoot. Like he people love him too, right? So the point is that like it makes more sense than ever. The reality that Dame might wear another uniform. But people are just so upset, but oh no, he's the greatest blazer ever. And if that's your argument, I agree. But if you don't make moves, then you're just going to be middling for the rest of his career in Portland. Because you will not have, let's just put it this way, you will not have a better opportunity to even attempt the home run and get better around Damian Lillard than you have right now. Without doing what? Sucking and tanking again, which he absolutely...
Yeah, some technical difficulties here. We're talking about trading Dame, and Discord decides we're done talking.
Didn't want to hear it.
Yeah, Craigbot knows that Dame should not be traded, apparently. So, Chris, before Craig left and stopped recording, is there anything else that you wanted to add on to it?
No, it's just that I still think that the intent is to try to build around him. And like I said, I just don't think there's going to be a better time in the future. So if you don't do it now, then you realistically have to consider your options to move on. I mean, I like we said that we don't think they can win with Ant and Dame, but we never said they couldn't win with a team built with Ant on it, right? So maybe he's your one or your two of the future, and him and Shaden and whatever pick you get are the guys you want to build around. I mean, it makes a ton of sense financially, right? You get out of Damian Lillard's future $60 million contract. You have all these young guys. You have the ability to go get some free agents. I mean, come on, it makes sense. That's the thing.
So go ahead.
No, go ahead.
If we were to get the first pick, let's just say we get the first pick. Do you think having Dame and Victor makes us any more of a contending team than we would be, in a normal off season? Like, does Victor make us and I agree with you. I think he's got all the talent in the world. I don't think the timelines match up though.
I think it makes you a much better team. I think it makes you a playoff team, and I think it makes Dame reconsider what he said about not wanting to rebuild this and that, because it's not going to take Victor Wembanyama that long to acclimate, and you can still go get some pieces because now you have an absolute star of a player under that rookie contract, right? That's helpful. True. So there's a lot of things working in your favor if you get Victor Wembanyama. It's if you get the 3rd overall pick and you're looking at Brandon Miller. Yeah, it's if you draft that guy, then the writing's on the wall because that's a project. Like he's good and he should be a star, but he's got the black cloud over him, and you don't know exactly how high his ceiling is. And Dame looks at that and goes, "Great, what are we doing here?" So. Again, I think the possibility of trading Dame is as realistic as ever, which makes it more understandable why Blazer fan wants to immediately put that fire out anytime they hear about it, because Blazer fan will not like it if that is the road that ends up getting taken.
So one last thing before we wrap up. What do you think in a realistic scenario where we want to trade Dame? What is like how so I mean, I know, we got Rudy Gobert and the Timberwolves making just a terrible idea and trading all their picks for him. And then you got Kevin Durant, who got 5 first-round picks. You got James Harden that, you're trading Ben Simmons and Curry and 2 first-round picks. And Kyrie, I think, got either 2 or 1 first round, and then you had 2 decent, fairly good players. What's the value of Damian Lillard? Like, what, as a team, what would you want to get from him? How many picks?
If you're the Blazers, I think you're looking for 4, and I think that's understandable. I mean, you look at what Durant, like you just said, got. You look at all the picks. You look at Mikal Bridges. I think that if the Nets trade him, which I think is way more realistic than anybody wants to allude to, why would they trade him? They just went to the playoffs. That team was absolute trash post trade deadline. By the way, you guys do realize that, right? Post trade deadline, they were a 44% win team. Pre-deadline, they were over 60%. They were buoyed by the Kyrie and Kevin Durant part of the year. And it's no surprise that they were ousted early in the playoffs. But why would you trade Mikal Bridges? Because, is Mikal Bridges the guy that you build around, or is he the legit piece that can help a contending team? Yep. Or do you trade him for someone that's a little less expensive and get picks? Like, if I'm Brooklyn and I'm looking at all the picks that I just got in that Kevin Durant deal, I look at Mikal Bridges, I go, he's really good, but I can trade him and go get 3 or 4 more of those picks and just load up and be ready to go for a full-on rebuild the way I want it. That's why it makes sense to trade him if they really wanted to. But so if you're Dame, I think the Blazers, I think you're looking for 4. I think you're absolutely looking for 4. But the thing is, who is in? That's the tough part too, Alex. Is who is realistically in the market for Damian Lillard with that type of asset to give you? Like the most realistic team for Dame over the last X amount of years was the Lakers. And they're probably still the team that would want him the most, but they have no more assets. They did them in dumb moves over the years to go get Russell Westbrook and stuff, right? So they don't have any assets. Now I look at Dame like this is a thing, like, okay, you just saw Milwaukee fizzle out. Well, maybe Milwaukee, I don't know their full asset situation, but okay, well, we know he's a really good defender, but it's like, okay, a Drew Holiday or whatever, the sign and trade with like all these different things. I'm just throwing spitballing as you shake your head, you idiot. Okay.
No, I was talking about the Bucks. They don't have a ton of assets either. I think they might have 2 tradable picks.
Yeah, but say it's something that they look down the road, and I get the 2 tradable picks. Yeah, that matters. But I mean, even a Chris Middleton type deal, like the Bucks, like if you're the Bucks, you would try to find a way, right? Because you look at that roster that they have, right, and you're like, oh my god, if you add Dame to that, it's game over. If you add Damian Lillard to that roster, even though they were just outed in the first round, right? If you add Damian Lillard to that type of offense to a team that's already good defense, it's over. But like you just said, where are the assets to get that deal done? Right? I mean, so it's like, that's the tough part is you look at the contending teams. Obviously, Philly would love to have Dame, especially if James Harden goes back home to Houston or whatever. What's their asset situation? Because they've been involved in a lot of deals over the years. Like, so it's just like, who is in play for Dame? Okay, so then, Charlotte always has something to deal. Yeah, because Dame wants to be traded from Portland to go play in Charlotte, right? So now you might have, similar to what you were saying about CJ McCollum, you might have hamstrung yourself, Alex, because you're in a situation where the teams that would most realistically want to have Dame don't have the assets to acquire Dame. So you have to get a third team involved. Like, it just becomes that much harder to get the deal done, to get what you want in return. And the thing is with Blazer fan, it doesn't matter what you get in return. You could get you could get a 5-team trade where you get the top 5 picks in the draft or whatever the hell, and Blazer fans will still say, nope, we didn't get enough for Dame. We didn't get enough for him.
Yep. And imagine him going to LA. Imagine the outcry for that. Let me ask you one question. You're bringing up all these teams. What about Utah?
If you're looking at a team that has assets, absolutely, but I don't know if that's what they're trying to do. Not with Danny Ainge. I think he's going to try to build it.
Yeah,
I mean that's what he did. That's what he did in Boston. I mean, it was get everything out of the cupboard and then go shopping and buy. I don't like this Kroger brand. I want the name brand stuff, right? And that's what he did. And Utah outperformed, I think, their roster obviously for most of the year. And he still looks at that, and I think he still has I think he's got some really good pieces that he can continue to build around. I mean, you got all the draft picks, and I think Lowry Markkanen, I mean, boy, I think they struck something special there where the guy is just the right situation, playing well, and they can continue to build around him and have some fun. But to give all those assets for Dame, when I think if you look at Utah realistically and say they gave away, they matched salary, Alex, and then gave away all the picks, what else do they have in that roster since they've already decimated it? I mean, Dame is right back in this similar situation.
I guess that's
if
true.
not a worse situation, right? Because there's just no one there at that point. So that's the tough part. Now you can get Utah in on the conversation to, like I said, when you get into the idea of 3-team and multi-team deals. But I don't think he ends up in Utah.
Yeah, that's a good point. You're dismantling your entire roster to get Dame, and then that's fair. That's why we have you here. I mean, it's a tough conversation to have, like we've said, 100 times now, but it's a realistic conversation that might actually happen, and people need to accept it, be ready for it, and it is a possibility that happens, and it sucks, but
it is.
We've had 10 great years.
I also think it's a strong possibility that, if Dame really wants to go to a certain place and the best they can offer is 2 picks, I think that could be something we consider just to do right by him. Like if he's, he's dead set on playing with a certain player, I could see that happening. You don't think so?
No, you're good. You're good. No, sorry. Okay. It was not you.
Yeah, because I don't know. I think Dame likes his guys, the people he's friends with. Maybe someone from the 2020 Olympic team. If he wants to play with them, I think he's done so much for the team in the city that if he made that request, I feel like we would abide by it. So I think 4 picks, we might get an offer from someone. I just don't know if the best offer is going to be the one we take in this situation.
Yeah, and that's true. And I'll also say when I go back to Cronin wanting to build around Dame, here's the thing too. It was pretty well known in a lot of circles that a player that Damian Lillard coveted, a player that he wanted to be in Portland, wanted to play alongside for a while, was Aaron Gordon, right? And Neil never wanted to make that move because Orlando wanted CJ. And so he didn't want to make the move because he didn't want to part off CJ. That's, again, we've been over that so many times. And there are other players, not just Aaron Gordon, that Dame's that's a guy I would really like to play with. It never happened. But it also was not a secret that Dame coveted playing next to Jeremy Grant.
Mm-hmm.
And with a different GM in house, what happened when it was known that Dame wanted to play with Jeremy Grant after like Fawad said, after their time on the Team USA, right? He got it done. So he listened to Dame. Now, I'm not saying that that's the best move because you're paid to be a GM. You're not to listen to your stars. That's why everyone gives LeBron James a bad time for not being a good GM, right? But it does give me, again, the 4-letter word hope. That Joe Cronin is looking to build around Dame because it did not take long for him to make moves that Dame had been in favor of, as where the other GM wasn't getting that done. So it's a world of difference to see what Joe Cronin can do. And so that's why everyone tries to grade Joe. What do you give Joe? If you ask me right now, what do you grade Joe Cronin? His job as GM. It's undetermined because I'm not grading it until October, till the summer of 2023 is done, because everything, as I've said, has pointed to this summer making that home run swing. We'll see what happens.
Fawad, anything you want to add?
No, I think that was a good conversation. A lot of things I agreed with. Let's just hope for the best in this off season. The draft lottery's in 2 weeks today, so that will tell us a lot.
Before I let Chris sign off, Chris, what you know about that anonymous NBA poll with T-Mac getting that greatest of all time vote, huh?
Someone who must have watched one of your Twitter streams or something, and or who listens to the podcast, and someone out there doesn't know what they're talking about, but also showed some respect to a legend.
I may have forged
never
a signature.
expected. Oh, that makes sense, because I never expected in a million years that any modern NBA player would throw Tracy McGrady up there as the greatest of all time, because nobody on this planet, as much as I love T-Mac, as much as you love T-Mac,
no, I
right?
agree.
Nobody has ever uttered Tracy McGrady's name in the conversation for the greatest basketball player of all time.
I want to know who it is.
Somebody, I want to know who it is too, and I want to know if he was immediately sent to the NBA's drug testing program, because somebody is on something.
Oh Lord, is J.R. Smith still in the NBA technically?
No, he's playing golf. He's golfing, Akron or something.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Chris, seriously, thank you so much for joining this podcast. Like I said, it's been a while. We've been trying to get it going. And somehow at your busiest point in your life, we do finally get you in here.
It is true. You guys have no idea. For all you out there listening, yesterday was a 14-hour workday. Today it is 9:23 p.m. on Tuesday, May 2nd. And I woke up for work this morning at 4:30. So we are deep into this day, and I could have been asleep right now. The pain and the effort it is taking to keep these eyelids open. I would have turned my lights on and gave you guys the full, studio effect, but then you would have seen how red my eyes are, and I can't subject you to that. But no, I did it. I took one for the team.
We appreciate it.
Alex and Fawad, the unbiased podcast, the most biased podcast there is, wants me on. You damn right. I want to. What's an extra hour of sleep? Screw that. I'm coming on, baby. Alex is my guy.
Plug it, Chris. Give us everything. Where are you at?
Make sure to follow the Trailcaster Discord, link in the description.
You're on radio. Let everyone know radio.
Yeah, guys, if you want to hear more of my awful takes, tune into iHeartRadio, Rip City Radio 620, available on the iHeartRadio music app. I am producing and co-hosting stuff there with Chad doing all the time. I also have Courtside Monday, which is really, really cool, because I've been doing it now for almost a year. I guess half year. It started in October. But it absolutely blows my mind, because Courtside Monday is a continued spin-off runoff of the famous Courtside that aired on NBC Sports and was on radio, and I'm hosting it now, which is crazy to think I am sitting in the same seat hosting the same show that guys like Mike Barrett and Steve Jones hosted in the past, because Courtside has a very, very long history in the city of Portland, and it's kind of cool to know that I'm a part of that long history with absolute greats that I have no business being associated with, but hopefully when it's all said and done, I can be. But that is every Monday right now. iHeartRadio, Rip City Radio 620, 6 to 7 every Monday. Like I said, listen on the app. Tune in if you're in your car. You can call in to come talk to me on the radio, 503-248-0620. I'll get you on the radio show if you want to call. And as always, I don't have a blue check mark anymore, because some billionaire decided that I wasn't worthy of it, even though I worked so hard to obtain it. But you can still find me on Twitter at Chris J. Burkhardt, where you can continue this conversation as much as you want. And I always try to interact, even if you have awful awful takes. I'll interact with you there if you want to interact with me. You take the time to talk to me, I'll take the time to talk to you. But that is where you can go find me if you want to hear some more of these tomes.
And you're forgetting one big one.
What's that?
Captain Chaos.
Yeah, come follow me on Twitch at Captain Chaos F5, where I haven't streamed since September because I got hired at Rip City Radio 620. And I just got a new job because I'm working 3 jobs right now because, it's 2023 and that's how you afford your mortgage. But yeah, you can come follow me on Twitch, add to my follow count so that if I do eventually stream again, you will see it. But you never know. I have thought about, Alex, getting on the Twitch a little more often if my schedule will allow, and not just for video game streaming, though, doing a little bit more of like a sports specific show type thing, just to have some fun. But the point is there's ways to find me. And of course, if you're listening to this podcast, you are probably a member of the Unbiased Podcast Discord, which you can ping me in there and I'll answer the question if I eventually see it, because I am a member of that. I feel like I'm an Alex OG over here. I'm gonna tell people, like, I have been a fan of Alex's for so long, which is weird because I wish people were a fan of me, right?
I'm a fan.
You bring me on because you think I add value, but I'm going to tell people eventually. I'll be like, I have been a fan of Alex's so long that I remember when his Twitch name wasn't some weird word that you couldn't pronounce. I knew when it was still T-Mac Creator 1. Yeah, that's right. That's how long I've been around.
What's wrong with Zoverse? That's just my name backwards.
Sure.
Hey, you know what? I gotta get away from the middle school names.
I like it. What's wrong with the middle school names? Captain Chaos. That was like my original AOL screen name, bro. Just stay true to yourself.
Other than being a diehard T-Mac fan, I have no ties to T-Mac. I'm not T-Mac. That's not my nickname. Nothing.
Yeah, it ticked me off the other night when you streamed Jackbox and you had a full crowd, because I didn't want to have anyone out because you had a full group, but I was just going to randomly sign in because the code was right there, and not tell you anything. But I was going to make my Jackbox name T-Mac Creator just to mess with everybody.
I'm gonna be honest with you. The amount of times that has actually happened, like on Among Us and everything else, it's it's pretty funny. Chris, once again, seriously, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it.
I always enjoy listening to you talk. I enjoy listening to your radio. And guys, honestly, if you guys have not listened to the radio, to the radio show specifically, I've always enjoyed the Monday show. And
thank you.
Trailcasters is also we've talked about it hundreds of times. Is a very good podcast, very enjoyable, and
it's much better than it used to be. I mean, I think I've been around now for 100 of the 300 episodes, and I can say wholeheartedly that the first 200 suck.
Let me ask you one quick question on your guys' podcast. Is Keith still hitting the cash register with the penny?
Here's the deal. Keith gets mad at me because I don't listen back to the podcast. He's like, "Did you listen to last week's podcast?" I'm like, "Why the hell do I have to listen to it? I recorded it. I know what I said. Well, I just want your feedback on the editing." I'm like, "I told you what I think about your editing. I don't like it, and you're not going to change it because you're the artist. So why do I have to listen back?" Every once in a blue moon, I'll listen, and he'll be like, "Oh, I can't believe you did it. That means so much." But I've never, to be fair, I've never done that. It's not a Keith thing. But like when I was working for NBC and I did TV, I didn't watch my shows back. I don't like to listen to my radio back. I think part of it is because I am a perfectionist. I want everything I do to be the absolute best product it can be. And there is no harsher critic of Chris Burkhardt than Chris Burkhardt. And I will listen back to a radio show or a podcast or a TV show that I was on, and I will nitpick the hell out of it. And then I will just be mad at myself. And I'm like, you know what? I get better every single episode. I know that it's practice. It's runs. I know what I need to work on. I don't have an ego big enough that, you know what? You know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to listen to myself. Talk about myself. Like, no.
You mean you don't take a shower and put your podcast on?
No, I don't. I probably should. I probably should. What do you listen to, babe? Oh, nothing. Just listening to myself.
Just
while I
talking to
shower. Yeah. Hey, sit there. Yeah, that Chris guy. I really like his takes.
He knows what he's talking about.
He knows what he's talking about. Anyway, guys, you
I have
guys have
one
been
final
wonderful as always. Oh, as many final questions as you want.
For all the non-Portland, non-Oregon listeners, including myself, can we watch Can we listen to the radio online anywhere, or is it not available for us?
Download the iHeartRadio music app, and you should be able to listen to it. I believe the iHeartRadio station is not geographically locked, except for Blazer games. So if like you're trying to listen to a Blazer game on the app, it won't. It will just play the Fox Sports. But you should be able to listen to Courtside as is, and it's also podcasted. It's kind of crazy. So we podcast every episode of Rip City Drive, which is a 3-hour show, and I air immediately after Rip City Drive. So on that Monday, they just take my hour a show and put it into the back end of that podcast. And I also try to get some YouTube videos out there on the Rip City Radio YouTube page. So if I have a guest like Sean Hyken, who joins me every once in a while, Jamie Hudson, who I know a lot of Blazer fans are familiar with, I'll put a video out there. But yeah, if you download the iHeartRadio music app, Fawad, you should hopefully be able to listen to it. If not, we'll help you guys out.
Well, Chris, once again, get some sleep. Thank you so much for joining. It's always fun talking with you.
Fun fact, I slept this entire podcast. I have no idea what I said.
Hey, me too. I'm just playing an old podcast and you're just responding to it.
There you go.
All right, Fawad, have a good night. Chris, have a good night. And as always, Rip City, baby. Thanks to My Life Pursuing for the music used on the intros and the outros of this podcast. You can check them out on all major streaming platforms at My Life Pursuing.
I'm trying, Jennifer.